Public health officials say the woman swallowed a tapeworm, claimed it would help her lose weight.
This is the brain of a 20-year-old woman in Beijing. In 2022, she went to the ER with headaches. Doctors assumed it was stress, maybe a migraine. But this woman had been researching an obscure Victorian diet, a tapeworm diet. When they saw her MRI, the headache was no surprise. Her brain looked like Swiss cheese. Hundreds of tapeworm parasites had made a home there. Worse, they were eating their way out. She didn't get this from bad sushi or walking barefoot in the mud. She paid for it. She bought diet pills on the dark web, hoping for a miracle cure. Instead, she bought a ticket to medical horror. The unsettling part is that she was repeating a ritual from 150 years ago, when high society women swallowed monsters to fit into corsets, and doctors invented gold traps to pull them back out. This is the disturbing reality of the Victorian tapeworm diet. Dying for looks. To grasp why anyone would turn their gut into a petting zoo for parasites, we must look at the 19th century. We imagine Victorians as dignified and moral. In reality, they were unhinged. If you think modern trends are bad, imagine a society where the hottest look was actively dying. In the mid-1800s, the Western world was gripped by tubercular chic. Tuberculosis, or consumption, was a horrific disease. But Victorians looked at the symptoms: pale skin, watery eyes, a ghostly thin frame, and wanted it. It was the heroin chic of the 1840s, but with more coughing blood. The trendsetter wasn't a model, it was the poet, Lord Byron. Byron was obsessed with thinness and terrified of getting fat. He lived on a diet of vinegar, water, cigars, and despair. He romanticized being so spiritually pure that the body just evaporated. As a rock star of his day, everyone followed. Women drank vinegar to destroy their appetites. They used arsenic wafers for white skin. They tightened corsets until their internal organs rearranged like a game of Tetris. But there was a problem. Starving is hard. The elite wanted the consumption look, but not the actual dying part. And they didn't want to give up their 12-course banquets. They needed a hack, a way to cheat nature. Just as the Industrial Revolution produced steam engines, the quack medicine industry offered a solution. A pill that promised you could eat like a king and look like a corpse. The sanitized lie. Enter the anti-fat industry of the late 19th century. This was the Wild West of pharmaceuticals with no FDA or safety regulations. By the 1990s, newspapers and mail-order catalogs were full of ads. One famous ad showed a woman with a tiny waist saying, "Eat, eat, eat, and always stay thin." The promise was intoxicating. No exercise, no vinegar diets. Just take a pill and let science do the rest. These pills were often marketed as sanitized tapeworms. They were claimed to be jar-packed and completely safe. Let's appreciate the phrase, sanitized tapeworm. It's like safe hand grenade or dry water. You cannot sanitize a living parasite that lives in filth. But Victorians didn't know that. Germ theory was still a debate. To consumers, sanitized just sounded like science. The pill was a small capsule. Inside, supposedly, was a baby cyst, the sleeping form of a tapeworm. The pill's shell would protect the cyst from stomach acid. Once in the gut, the capsule would dissolve and the baby tapeworm would wake up. For a few dollars, about $150 today, you could buy this roommate. Of course, the patent medicine industry was built on fraud. Many pills were likely fake, containing only flour or sugar. In those cases, the customer was lucky. But for those who got the real deal, the horror was just beginning. They weren't just losing weight, they were inviting a monster into their home. Here, the story shifts from quirky history to medical horror. The way the pill actually worked was a nightmare. Let's say you were lucky and swallowed a cyst of Taenia saginata, the beef tapeworm. This was the safer of the two main options. Once the cyst hatches, a tiny, alien-looking thing emerges. Its head has 4 powerful suckers. It uses these to clamp onto your gut wall, and it never lets go. A beef tapeworm can reach 30 feet long. That's the length of a school bus coiled inside you. The myth was that the worm would eat your fat. That is a lie. The worm has no mouth. It bathes in your gut slurry and steals glucose and amino acids before your body can. You aren't losing weight because the worm is eating your love handles. You are losing weight because you are slowly starving to death. But the main reason for the weight loss is poisoning. The worm passes its waste products directly into your system. This causes chronic nausea, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. The Victorian beauty was skinny because she was violently ill. Then there are the side effects not listed on the bottle. The worm is made of thousands of tiny segments. Each segment is a reproductive factory filled with up to 100,000 eggs, and these segments move. Victorian medical journals are filled with horror stories. Patients would wake up to find bedsheets covered in what looked like moving grains of rice. These were worm segments that had crawled out of the host's anus while they slept. Imagine waking up and brushing living pieces of your diet aid off your mattress. But believe it or not, that was the best-case scenario. Remember the Swiss cheese brain scan from the beginning? That happens when you lose the tapeworm pill Russian roulette. Victorians didn't have advanced testing. A tapeworm cyst looked like a tapeworm cyst, but there are 2 main species, the beef tapeworm and the deadly pork tapeworm. If your pill contained the eggs of the pork tapeworm, the worm's life cycle changes into a horror movie. If you swallow a beef tapeworm cyst, you get a worm in your gut. It stays there. But if you swallow pork tapeworm eggs, the parasite gets confused. Normally, a pig eats the eggs. The eggs hatch into babies that dig into the pig's muscles. Then a human eats undercooked, infected pork. The baby worm grows into an adult inside the human's gut. This adult pork tapeworm is a nightmare. To anchor itself, it uses a crown of up to 32 sharp hooks to dig into your gut wall. This causes severe illness and extreme pain. The diet pills contain the raw eggs directly. When you swallow the eggs, the parasite thinks you were the pig. These worm babies don't want to live in your gut. They want to live in your flesh. They dig through your gut wall and ride your bloodstream like a superhighway. They can end up in your eyes, causing blindness, but often they follow the blood flow straight to the brain. There, they dig into the delicate tissue and form a nest. This condition is called neurocysticercosis. For a while, the worm sits there, quietly feeding. You might have headaches or feel a little off, but eventually the worm dies. Your body suddenly realizes a rotting corpse is in your brain, and it goes nuclear. It attacks the dead worm, causing massive inflammation and swelling. The Victorian socialite was trading her mind for a smaller dress size. But getting the worm in was the easy part. Getting it out required a device so barbaric it makes the parasite look tame. Let's say you survived the brain worms and got the safe beef worm. You've reached your target weight. How do you evict a tenant hooked into your flesh? Today, a pill dissolves the worm. Victorian medicine was about experimental torture. One method was swallowing male fern root extract, a potent neurotoxin. But the dose needed to paralyze the worm was close to the dose that would paralyze the human. Patients could go blind or fall into a coma. If you were wealthy, you might try the invention of Dr. Alpheus Myers. In 1854, he filed a patent for the tapeworm trap. The device was a small gold or silver cylinder filled with bait, like cheese. Here was the procedure. You would sit in a chair and swallow this metal cylinder, but it was attached to a strong silk cord that hung from your mouth. You would sit there, waiting. The theory was the starving worm would smell the bait. It would climb up from your gut, through your stomach, and stick its head in the trap. Inside was a spring-loaded trap with serrated teeth. Snap! The worm's head would be caught. Then the doctor would simply pull the string. There were a few problems with this invention. First, tapeworms don't have noses. They can't smell. Second, stomach acid kills them, so they rarely travel up. And third, pulling a 30-foot worm up your throat is a massive choking hazard. Victorian reports describe patients clawing at their throats as a wriggling mass blocked their airway. It was a death so gruesome that even hardened doctors were shaken. And yet, people bought the trap. The fear of being fat was stronger than the fear of choking on a parasite. You would think this horror would end the nightmare forever. Eventually, the government did step in. But making the pills illegal didn't kill the diet. It just pushed it into the shadows, waiting for a comeback. The insanity lingers. By the early 1900s, the tapeworm diet began to fade. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 forced companies to list ingredients. Suddenly, you couldn't sell a pill without admitting it contained worm eggs. The practice went underground, but it never truly went away. Rumors swirled about celebrities using them. The most famous legend involved opera singer Maria Callas, who lost nearly 80 pounds. The press claimed she did it with a tapeworm. In reality, she likely contracted one accidentally from raw steak. But the public only saw the weight loss, and the legend was born. That brings us back to today, back to that brain scan in Beijing. The internet has become the new Wild West of patent medicine. The dark web has replaced the Victorian mail-order catalog. They share success stories, convincing themselves they will get the safe one. The woman in Beijing thought she was buying a shortcut. Instead, she bought unlabeled pills from a stranger online. She paid the price with her body. The Victorian tapeworm diet wasn't a quirky fad. It was proof of how far humans will go to control their biology. We look back at them with disgust, but they weren't stupid. They were desperate for a solution in a world offering only poison. This is why the medical community had to step in. When society demands a standard but offers no safe tools, people find dangerous ones. Modern, medically supervised approaches exist because of these historical failures. They are tools designed to replace the arsenic, starvation, and parasites. History shows us the drive to control weight is powerful, powerful enough to make a person swallow a gold capsule on a string. The goal of modern medicine is to ensure that today, we never have to.